They say time heals everything, but some wounds, the kind you inflict on your own father, don't fade so easily. I still remember the way he used to knock twice on my bedroom door. Not once, not 3 times, always 2. It was his way of checking in without barging in. I never appreciated that. Not when I was young and hot-headed. Not when I thought I knew everything. Now, I'd give anything to hear those 2 knocks again. When I was in my 20s, I was angry all the time. Angry at the world, but mostly angry at him. I blamed my dad for every hard lesson life threw at me. If a job fell through, it was because he didn't teach me enough. If a relationship ended, it was because of the way he raised me. I rarely called. When I visited home, I picked fights. He'd sit quietly, hands folded in his lap, letting me vent. I mistook that quiet for weakness. I mistook his patience for indifference. But he never raised his voice, not once. He'd just nod and offer me a cold drink, as if that might wash away the bitterness. I remember one Thanksgiving. I stormed out of the house halfway through dinner because he'd asked if I was seeing anyone. That was it. A simple question, but to me it felt like judgment. I didn't come back that night. I didn't call to explain. I let Mom make excuses for me, and he still mailed me a birthday card the following week. Inside was a note. No matter how far you walk, the porch light is always on. I threw it away. Years later, after my mom passed, he was left alone in that house, with its faded wallpaper and quiet rooms. I still didn't visit. I told myself I was busy, that I couldn't handle the grief, that it was easier this way. The truth? I couldn't face him. I couldn't face the man I'd spent so many years resenting. The man who never stopped loving me through it all. But the worst part came later. It came in the form of a phone call from his neighbor. My dad had collapsed in the garden. A stroke, they said. He was alive, but everything had changed. He was in a care facility. He wasn't speaking much. And just like that, the man I'd pushed away for so long was slipping through my fingers. I packed my bag that night and flew out the next morning. I didn't know what I was walking into. I didn't know if he'd want to see me. I just knew one thing. I was running out of time to make it right. They say you never forget the last time you hold someone's hand, but no one warns you about the silence right before. The air in the care facility smelled of antiseptic and wilted flowers. I walked through the corridor with my heart pounding so loud I thought the nurses could hear it. Room 218. That's where they said he was. My hand hesitated on the doorknob. What if he didn't want to see me? What if I was too late? When I walked in, he was by the window in a recliner, a blanket draped over his legs. His eyes were closed, but his chest rose and fell gently, rhythmically. He looked so small, this man who had once carried me on his shoulders, who used to lift me over puddles when I was little. Now he looked tired, fragile. "Dad?" I said softly. His eyes opened slowly. There was a pause, a flicker, recognition, and then he smiled. Not a big one. Just a small, weary curl of the lips. But it was enough to crack something inside me wide open. I sat beside him, gripping the arms of the chair because I didn't know what else to do. "I should have come sooner," I said. My voice trembled. "I was angry for too long. I blamed you for everything." He didn't say much. He didn't need to. He reached out, hand trembling slightly, and placed it on top of mine. If you're still listening to this story, please comment the number 3 so I know you're here with me. Because this next part, it's where everything begins to change. That touch, it said more than any apology I could have crafted. It said, "I still love you, even after everything." It said, "You're still my son." I came back the next day, and the next. Every morning, I brought him his favorite newspaper, even though he barely read anymore. We sat in silence a lot, but not the awkward kind. It was peaceful, healing. One afternoon, I found an old radio in the staff lounge. I brought it to his room and played some of his favorite jazz records, Louis Armstrong, Miles Davis. His fingers tapped faintly on the armrest.
We didn't speak. We just listened. It was the first time in years I felt like a son again. And if you're still with me, comment 3 below, because what comes next is the part I'll never forget. He never asked why I stayed away. He never made me explain the years I lost in my own bitterness. Instead, he gave me the greatest gift a father could give, the chance to come home. That week, I realized that forgiveness doesn't always come in words. Sometimes it comes in moments, quiet, steady, and full of grace. You never expect to cry in a hallway, but that's where my guilt caught up with me. It was a Thursday, the kind of day when everything feels a bit slower, like even the clock is tired. I had just finished helping Dad adjust his blanket when the nurse called me into the hallway. She wanted to go over his medication schedule, something routine. But as I stood there, nodding to words I barely absorbed, I glanced back at his door, and it hit me. The weight of all those lost years, birthdays missed, Christmas mornings with unopened cards, voicemails I deleted without listening, all because I was too proud, too angry. I excused myself and turned toward the end of the hall, where there was a small family lounge no one ever used. I sat down on the faux leather couch and started to cry. Not a gentle tear or two. It was the kind of crying that scrapes at your insides, the kind you can't hold in anymore. Years of blame, shame, regret. They all came pouring out at once. I thought I hated him. I thought I had every right to cut him out. After all, he was the one who never said I love you when I needed it most. He was the one who worked too much, missed my school plays, never asked how I really felt. But sitting there, with my hands covering my face and my heart in shambles, I realized something terrifying. He had always loved me in the only way he knew how. He built his love out of actions, fixing my bike, teaching me to drive, slipping a $20 bill in my coat pocket without saying a word. He just didn't know how to say it, and I never gave him the space to show it his way. When I returned to his room, he looked at me like he knew, like he had always known. His hand reached out again, and I held it tighter than I ever had. "Dad," I said, voice trembling. I was wrong. His eyes were soft, forgiving. "I know," he whispered. If that moment touched something in you, comment 3. Because it was in that moment that everything I thought I knew about love shifted. We didn't talk about the past again. We didn't need to. That afternoon, we watched an old Western on the tiny TV mounted in the corner of his room. It was the same movie we used to watch when I was a kid, sitting on the couch with a bowl of popcorn between us. But this time, I sat beside his hospital bed, holding his hand. And for the first time in decades, I felt like a son who had finally come home. I didn't know it would be the last night. If I had known, I would have stayed awake. I would have held his hand longer. I would have told him everything I should have said over the years, all the apologies, all the thank yous, all the I love yous stuck in the back of my throat for decades. But instead, I kissed his forehead around 10:30 and whispered, "I'll be back in the morning." That was a lie I didn't mean to tell. Around 2 a.m., the call came. I picked up the phone with a casual hello, expecting a late shift nurse to ask about his meds or diet. But it was different. Her voice was quiet, hesitant. "I'm so sorry," she said. "Your father passed peacefully in his sleep." My world froze. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. I just sat on the edge of my bed, phone still pressed to my ear, the nurse's voice drowned out by a sudden silence that filled the room like smoke. How do you grieve someone while drowning in guilt? Please, comment number 3 if you're still with me, because what I'm about to share is something I've never forgiven myself for. I wasn't there. I wasn't there to hold his hand as it grew cold. I wasn't there to whisper, "It's okay, you can go now." I wasn't there to repay the man who once sat by my bedside through fevers and nightmares and broken hearts. I had just started making things right. Just when we had finally begun to understand each other, he was gone. I kept thinking about the way he looked at me the day before, peaceful, maybe even proud. And I wondered, was that enough for him? Was that one final day of connection enough to erase all the years I spent resenting him? I wanted to believe it was. But the truth? Grief isn't just sadness. It's 1,000 echoes of "I should have" that never stop ringing. I should have called more. I should have said I loved him sooner. I should have brought him to dinner, made him laugh, shown him the son he deserved. But I waited too long. I waited. And now I'll carry that weight for the rest of my life. If you've ever lost someone before mending old wounds, comment 3. You're not alone. That night, I sat on the kitchen floor until sunrise, staring at the fridge where his last Father's Day card still hung. It read, "Thanks for everything." But now, I wish I had written more. After the funeral, I stayed behind when everyone else left. The service was simple, just like he would have wanted. No long speeches, no dramatic music, just the old church choir humming Amazing Grace, and a few neighbors sharing quiet nods, as if words weren't needed. I sat in the last pew for a long time, staring at the wooden box holding the man who had once carried me on his shoulders through county fairs and baseball games. And I kept thinking, he never gave up on me. Not once. Even when I was selfish. Even when I was cruel. Even when I walked out that front door and didn't look back for years. He still showed up. When I was in that accident at 27, he was the first one at the hospital. When I lost my job, during the 2008 recession, he called every week to make sure I was eating. When I forgot his birthday, twice, he laughed it off and told me, "You'll remember when you're my age." He had every reason to stop caring, to walk away and let me live with my pride and distance. But he didn't. Instead, he left me something far more valuable than money or heirlooms. Grace. That man, my father in every way that counts, taught me how to show up even when it's hard. He showed me that love doesn't come with conditions, that forgiveness isn't something you earn, it's something you offer, especially when it's hardest to give. After his death, I began writing. At first, just scribbles on napkins, then full journal entries, then letters addressed to him I'd never send. Through every sentence, I started to understand who he really was, and who I had become, and slowly, the anger I'd carried for so long began to dissolve. I realized I had spent years punishing him for not being perfect, for not always knowing the right thing to say, for being quiet when I wanted loud, and firm when I wanted soft. But he was there. He never stopped being there. That's what mattered. I forgave him. And maybe, just maybe, I forgave myself too. One afternoon, I visited the small cabin he used to take me to when I was a boy. It was old now. The paint was peeling. The roof sagged a little on one side. But inside, on the mantel above the fireplace, sat a picture of us. Me at 10 years old, laughing in his arms, covered in dirt from fishing. He had kept that photo all those years. And in that moment, I didn't feel grief. I felt love. If you've ever lost someone with words left unsaid, you know this ache. Please comment number 3 to let me know you're still here, listening to this story, maybe because you've lived something like it too. These days, I find peace in small things, sitting by the window with a cup of coffee, reading the local paper, calling my son just to say hi. I tell my grandkids I love them every chance I get, because time is shorter than we think, and regrets grow fast when we leave them unattended. So I'll leave you with this. Don't wait. Don't wait to say sorry. Don't wait to say I'm proud of you. Don't wait to show up, even if it's awkward, even if it's late. Sometimes, the people we've hurt the most are the ones who would still hold our hand when the world fades, just like he held mine, until the very end. In the end, it wasn't just about a wedding. It was about the longing for a father's love, and the pain of hearing it denied. Sometimes, even those who raise us can be wounded so deeply, they forget how to forgive. But healing doesn't always come from others. It begins with ourselves. If you've ever felt the sting of rejection from family, know this: you are not alone. Love is not always about blood, but about those who show up when it matters. If this story touched you, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps keep these Reddit family stories alive.